This is FNGR, and today we're talking about Chambers of My Heart. I've known Chamber all the way back to the commentary community, probably perhaps 3 or 4 years ago, though I wouldn't say that we were ever besties. You know what, I'm going to try and ditch the mass history lesson today. The subject is a video called Suit Yourself's Response Parent Discussion. Suit Yourself is an anti-SJW channel who on occasion goes after pedophiles. He's been removed from YouTube a series of times, and if you're wondering why, well, there's a reason I try not to scream and say what I'm really thinking on YouTube about many predators out there. As fun as entertaining as that would be, I want to be able to survive when people inevitably hit that report button underneath the video. Suit might have cared a little less. And if you want to know how I feel about Suit's content, I have patroned Suit Yourself in the past. I suggest you do the same. There will be a link to his channel and his Patreon down below. I'm going to be jumping into Chambers' video at 3:57.
Chapter 12. Sexuality During Childhood and Adolescence. Learning Objectives. Discuss examples that demonstrate how infants of both sexes are born with the capacity for sexual pleasure and response. Why? Why would you sit there and discuss examples and then demonstrate how?
No, hold on now. The examples are supposed to demonstrate because again, and I know you don't have kids, you have nephews. Again, the article is going to be the link in the description. I really want to emphasize that because not a lot of people know this. I do not have kids, but I've had to go and read up on this because there was... I was at my grandmother's house and my nephew just started doing it with the couch. And it was weird. It is weird. It's a very weird topic and it's something you really have to be careful with.
Yes, Chambers, this is something that you have to be careful with. Public perception is important. And going on to a public forum like YouTube and telling people that you had a family member who was doing that sort of thing reflects poorly on you.
Sex workers my whole life. My mom prostituted herself out for drugs, for God's sake.
We at John Q Public did not need to know that. Your family member and his family must be thrilled to death that you have chose to use them in this delicate matter as an example publicly. I know for a lot of people, thinking for yourself is highly praised, an admirable trait. It doesn't hurt if you're handling a topic like this, perhaps in your case and some other people's, to perhaps maybe have people take a look at the script or perhaps show the video to a friend ahead of time before releasing it, just to see how abnormal the topic is and to see if your head is in the right place.
So looking at the syllabus here, discuss examples that demonstrate how infants of both sexes are born with a capacity for sexual pleasure and response. Now, it's not encouraging people to do that with infants. It's saying that even little kids, again, as we've talked about in my previous videos, kids don't have the age of consent. They don't understand what any of that is, but kids will begin to explore themselves, even infants. For anybody who has changed a diaper of a baby, you will notice that sometimes they keep sticking their hand. They want to put their hand in the way. When you go in and take out the wipes, they want to put their hand in the way. And they kind of want to... Anyway, you get the point. So, number 2, discuss common features of sexual development that occur during childhood, because some kids do start masturbating and parents have to know how to deal with that.
Why, for years, generations, decades, centuries, millennia, I've never heard of a class, and pardon my ignorance if I'm wrong, that such a study was necessary for proper parenting, where this had to be something that parents had to learn. And whether or not this is true or not, part of being a parent is preventing a child from taking on behavior that's harmful. Now, whether or not you find masturbation to be harmful or not isn't necessary for debate in this situation. It seems like a poor idea, call me crazy, to allow your child to do this sort of thing in front of someone else. That would be unacceptable for an adult, a teen, or a kid, and I fail to see why you needed a study for this. Kind of feels like a no-brainer.
I heard a story of an old friend of mine when she was working at a child care center. One of the little kids, it was, I think, a pre-K class or whatnot. One of the little boys took it out, and yeah. So she was talking about how you really don't interrupt, but you just put him in a separate room. This is what I guess the school did. This pre-K is like you put him in a separate room and you leave him alone until he's done.
Part of being human, separating us from animals, is learning self-control, not giving in to our base instincts. There are enough people in the world that feel that the world revolves around them, and the last thing we need to do is groom children into having jerk-off timeouts. I'm not going to tell you how badly a child should be punished for whipping it out. I'm not a parent. But the last thing you need to do in such a situation is to be accommodating for such behavior.
They don't understand what they're doing, but they do start to explore themselves. Let's see, during childhood, including discussion of the responses of parents and other adult caregivers. So this is really important. Not a lot of parents are aware of this, and not a lot of parents know how to deal with this. Again, we've talked about on this channel, sexual education, proper sexual education. And so little kids, they're going to catch the parents in the bedroom. They're going to start exploring themselves.
You can make the child put his clothes back on. You can make the child pull his or her hand out of his or her pants. Have we overvalued our children so much that the mere idea of telling them no or expressing that there are things that they cannot do is so unthinkable?
So you really have to be careful with the way that you treat that. 3, define adolescence and explain childhood and adolescent sexuality in Western society. So this is talking about how we treat it as a society. How do we look at this and how we treat it? Now, granted, once again, children cannot consent. So this is not what this is saying. This is saying that children do experience it at very, very young ages. That's where they start to explore. And that's why you hear parents, because I believe that my own mother said this, is that you have to be careful, like, especially when little kids, because like little girls, for anyone who has a little girl, and like 2 to 3 years old, because I had a cousin that was doing this when she was very tiny. She would just lift up her skirt. She thought it was funny, and she'd giggle, and mommy would tell her, no, sweetie, keep your skirt down. So little kids will do these bizarre things because they don't understand. So as parents properly explain, like with my little niece, when she was getting her diaper changed, wanted to put her hand down there. Mom kept moving it and kept saying, no, that's icky. But again, my mother stepped in and go, no, you don't want to tell her that because you're going to make her ashamed of that. Not of the hand thing, but make her ashamed of that area until you tell that's a special place.
Chambers, being a kid, learning poop is gross seems pretty basic. Your mom seemed to have the right idea. No. Stop that, and physically preventing the behavior. I'm a bit confused between your examples of your mom and some of the other examples that you used with the research examples that seem to be contradictory. Your mom seemed to have the right idea.
Special place. So again, you have to be really careful, and there's a whole Twitter thread, which I will read. Let's continue on. And then one more, define puberty and describe the physical changes that occur for males and females. So that talks about puberty, which is not fun, and it discusses how both sons and daughters go through that. Let's continue.
Infants are capable of sexual pleasure when they are born.
It does not say that when they are born. Now, something too, because I had to talk to my sister about this when my niece was born. When my niece was born, babies do get their periods when they are born. The females, the little girls, they do because it is a burst of hormone. I would have to read up on it, but they have everything's new. Their hormones new. So they do get their periods because, once again, my sister was changing my little niece's diaper when I was in there. We were talking. She had just gotten home from the hospital, and she was settling back in and making sure everything was ship-shape. And I go in there going like, is she okay? She goes, yeah, no, that's normal. So they do get their periods when they are first born because, again, they're brand new. That hormones are still trying to adjust. Everything is trying to adjust and grow. So that does happen. And I will find a article for you guys, and I will put that in the description.
You kind of jumped there, Chambers. You did not create a clear line from point A to B. But let's take a look at the article. The article being named, "You Don't Have to Freak Out If Your Toddler Masturbates." Dr. I'm not going to get this name right, states masturbation might mean a no-hand simulation of a kind. Your toddler may rub their private parts against pieces of furniture, their toys, and even a part of your body until they climax. This is from the article Word for Word. Also word for word, what can be done, according to Dr. Michelle L. Yang and Dr. Erica Fullwood, in a recent publication, Parents Should Resist Stopping a Toddler from Masturbating, Scolding, or Threatening a Child is inappropriate. They contest, and efforts to stop the behavior forcefully will only reinforce it and possibly install a sense of shame or wrongdoing as the child gets older. In most cases, it's just a phase that will pass until rediscovered in teenage years, along with the child's fascination with that region. I'm going to jump ahead here a little bit in the article. If your toddler is too young to understand the concept of privacy, distract them when they begin to masturbate in public. Send them on errands or set up a game such as a jigsaw puzzle for them to complete. When inside, simply ignore it and allow them to climax. I think the world could stand to have a little shame, and I think I, personally, could go my entire life without seeing shit like this. I feel a natural and sane reaction is to discourage behavior like this entirely. The next link Chambers links to is called Newborn Girls Can Get Mini Periods, and here's why you should worry. Why it does explain babies having periods, it doesn't explain why Chambers made that awkward segue from Suit's remark about the article where he reads off the article stating infants are capable of sexual pleasure when they are born. And Chambers, you just went on a rant about periods at birth in response.
It's not saying when they're born, but it just, again, children do start to explore, they start to get curious, and that's why you have to be very careful and guard that curiosity, but you want to introduce them to that sort of thing properly and when it's the right time.
Chambers, what proof do you have that not introducing this behavior to kids is harmful? Will it prevent children from growing up and having jobs, learning social skills? What possible detriment could this lead to versus accommodating children and infants to such unnecessary habits?
Discussion properly, otherwise you're going to make them ashamed and afraid to ask questions. Let's go.
Discuss common features of sexual development that occur during childhood, including discussion of the responses of parents and other adult caregivers. What are we doing?
That's referring to puberty. That's referring to, again, the child beginning to explore themselves, because a lot of kids do that before puberty. So, once again, children who are very curious are going to ask a lot of questions. This is talking about how to have that discussion with them.
Are we normalizing pedophilia?
No, and I do understand, because Suit Yourself has dealt with a lot of that nonsense. I've had to deal with a lot of that nonsense. And so it's, when people see stuff like this, my brain, when I first saw the article, the clickbaity title, I went, what the crap? What is this?
This whole practice, Chambers, is ultimately unnecessary. Now, whether or not this is pedophilic, Chamber, I will attempt to give you the benefit of the doubt. Though, considering that you're from the anti-SJW community, how you are pushing the further sensitivity and shame-free environment against conventional common sense, I kinda don't see how I can finish this sentence without calling you a social justice warrior at best.
Who needs to get fired? But I went through the article 3 to 4 times to make sure I understood. It's like, oh wait, this is teaching parents how to discuss certain stuff with their kids. Not a lot of parents know how to do that, and it's not really talked about from what I understand, because sex is very hush-hush, and not a lot of people, as we've discussed on this channel, know how to talk about that stuff with their kids as they're learning, maturing, as they begin to see more and more stuff like that, but they shove it underneath the rug, and the kid, now adult, has problems later on.
By what average? I don't see any chart in any of these links chambers. Have you ever considered that this philosophy is seeking to be more accommodating to outliers and to treat the whole mass of people due to a few abnormalities, and that would potentially cause more harm than good? On top of all that, Chambers, this is an argument that a medical doctor would have a hard time being able to make versus the pushback. Hell, a series of medical professionals would have a series of strange looks in response to this study. I kind of don't get how you didn't go, maybe I'm not a professional equipped enough to tackle this one. And I think we found the biggest pushback in this entire topic. If you're a parent considering taking advice from any of Chambers of My Heart's sources, be prepared to be alienated from your friends, possibly your family, much less the image that you will potentially take on from local law enforcement are likely to give you some very strange looks if you start to pass along reckless ideas like these.
Most of this is pretty meh, but what really gets me is the infant part.
Because once again, they're brand new babies. If you've ever changed the diaper of a baby, which I have, and I've watched my siblings and my mom do it while we're talking, and that stuff stinks. Open a window. But yeah, no, babies will try to put their hands down there and whatnot, and you have to tell them, like, no, that's a special place. No, mommy or daddy needs to clean you up. No, let me put your diaper on.
According to your article, Chambers, you're not supposed to stop them. I think your common sense is shining through in spite of your need to signal how progressive you're being here.
This is a discussion of all of that. This is not encouraging people to have sex with children. This is not encouraging people to stimulate babies and children. This is teaching parents how to have a discussion. You have to be able to know how to discuss these things. And I understand your caution and the immediate red alarms, because I know you've dealt with some shit, Suit. But this is teaching parents how to discuss those things, because you have to, or you're going to create problems down the road for your children later on that it's going to be very hard to combat.
So teaching your 2-year-old, your 3-year-old, your 4-year-old, and your 5-year-old not to masturbate is going to cause irrevocable harm, despite kids forgetting crap on a daily basis. I really don't see why a 2, 3, or 4, or 5-year-old really needs to be taking on serious topics like these. It feels ultimately unnecessary. Unless Chambers is suggesting not allowing a child to masturbate is sexual abuse in and of itself. Chambers, do you understand that people should want to push back against this? This is unrepentant liberalism gone wild. This is a political agenda with a hackneyed progressive idea put forth by a college university. I feel that such teachings are unnecessary to this scope and degree. This isn't a slippery slope, it's a goddamn slip and slide. Chambers, till next time, thank you, fuck you, bye.